Hey guys, before we start, little content warning. This conversation includes some discussions around topics of suicide and mental ill health. Ben, welcome to Shifting the Narrative.
Yes, thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm all right. I'm probably a 7.5. So out of 10. So that's what Talk Club's all about. How are you out of 10? And I'm probably 7.5. I've had a death in the family recently, and
Sorry to hear that, man.
Thank you. But also I'm it's been a tiring week. It's half term at the moment, so it's a tiring week. But 7.5.
We're recording this on a Friday.
Yes.
And it's the end of half term week, so thank you for being here.
So what are you out of 10? How are you out of 10?
What I absolutely love about this question is the ability to use decimal places.
Yes.
So I'm probably rocking up today right now as an 8.2.
Good. Okay.
I absolutely love when I have the opportunity to speak to inspirational people. I'm not behind a screen. I've got a little bit of a screen here, but I'm not having to do the typical things in a work week. I get to just chat to people, which is what it's all about, right? So yeah, I'm going to go 8.2.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's your number. You can do whatever you like with it, right? And what I love about where we go with it is some people really it's about you actually being present. It's actually being present in this moment and asking yourself where you are. And people go, can I have this? Can I have that? You can have whatever you like, right? If they give me a quick 7, I normally say you can't have that because they haven't actually thought about it. I want you to think. That's all I care about, thinking. So they'll go 7 and I'll go, now you've just said you're okay, right? I don't want to, I go, are you a 6.9 or you're a 7.1 or are you 6.5 or a 7.5, right? I want you to swing. Have a decent swing at it and ask. And normally they'll go, I'm closer to a 6.5, and they'll normally go down because they haven't actually thought about it. And then they go, the reason why they haven't thought about it is because things aren't particularly great. So it's really interesting, the way that you go. I personally, when people start going in, I'm an 8.25, and I go, come on, you're having a laugh here, right? But it's just literally, it's a technique to get people talking.
It's a mechanism, right?
Yeah, it's just a mechanism. Like one of my friends is German, and I have these. I know that if my number, I like to exist around an 8.5. I know that if I start getting towards a 5s, I'm not in a great space.
Yeah. My
German mate goes to me. I go, so how are you out of 10? He goes, I think I'm a 5. And I was like, Christ, what's wrong? And he's gone, nothing, I'm a 5. And I've gone, okay. And he goes, well, 5's in the middle. And
gone, fives are 7, right?
Of course it is. It's like 5's are 7, exactly that. But to him, 5 was in the middle. And I loved that. But he thought about it. And it's so we're playing around with it. Me and Gav, my co-CEO, co-founder, we're playing around with this idea. We don't think the wording's right yet, but this idea of what a safety number is or what a low number is. Because Gav's low number is a 6, my low number is a 5. So if he checks in at a 6, I go, okay, where are we up to? Let's talk about this. And if I go down to a 5, but everyone will have their happy number and their unhappy number, if you like. But this is all about, it's just about checking in with yourself. It's about being present with your mind and your well-being, really.
Well, we're gonna talk about the significance of those 6 words to hundreds of thousands of people, including myself. But I've known you a little while, since the pre-Goodfest days,
yes,
pre-pandemic days, and always been in awe, Ben, on how you've been able to wear so many different hats to such a high ability.
Thanks, mate.
I mean, not just the amazing Talk Club hat that you're wearing today, but creative director, filmmaker, change maker, event curator, campaigner, and co-founder of Talk Club, let alone being a father. How do you introduce yourself and tell us about how you kind of co-found this brilliant mental fitness organisation, Talk Club?
So I've always looked at myself as a problem solver, right? So whatever I'm doing, I'm problem solving. So when I started in advertising, I think my first gig in advertising was 1998, right? So I'm 50 this year. So what's that? I don't know, 27 years type thing. I've always looked at anything I'm doing as how can I solve the problem, right? And sometimes solving a problem in advertising was always get people to buy this car or sort of jump on this flight or the other things that I was destroying the planet with. And then when I started moving into ethical advertising when I was in Sydney, and purpose-driven work, that was when it started really interesting for me, because it was actually, we're taught these skills as creative people, we're taught these skills to sort of like to communicate and tell different things. And then, so that was when the problem solver in me really, really came out, because I had no budgets to work with, but I had to try and get people to do something interesting. Then we were in Sydney for 6 years, we had our eldest, and we came back to the UK, and when we came back to the UK, I was back in the country 2 weeks, and I got a phone call from Steve's cousin saying, "Are you sitting down?" And my childhood best friend took his own life. So as the first time I've been confronted by suicide, it was pretty heavy for me. Like, when this goes out, please chuck a note that we may be talking about suicide. So 3 years of therapy of trying to work out a lot of whys, which was really hard. And then what I decided to do, which if anyone who's been confronted by suicide, you never find out why, right? It's a thing. It's sort of like it's another stage of your grief. So what I decided to do was, I was reading an article saying, these horrific statistics. It was the biggest killer of men under 45. It's now the biggest killer of men under 50. A man takes his own life every 2 hours in the UK. 76% of suicides are male. So 75% of suicides are male currently. And I was really angry reading this. I was really angry that Steve was almost just put into statistics, because he wasn't a number. He was. I mean, I say this quite a lot. He was a father. He was a son. He was a brother, and he was a friend. He was my friend, and I was really, really angry with this. And what I'd learned and a lot of the work that you do, what I learned when I was at Republic of Everyone in Sydney, the ethical ad agency, was let's start a fight. Let's start a fight. Who are we going to fight? Like, so it was in Sydney. It was we will fight. We will fight. Big fossil fuel. We will fight the politics. We will fight who we're going to fight. And so I decided to start a fight with suicide. That's where I was going to go. I was going to start a fight with suicide. So I decided sort of like that I was going to make a film, because I read that men of our age watch sport and documentaries. So I'm going to make a film. And I'd made a film before called Slowing Down Fast Fashion. It wasn't a particularly enjoyable experience with a production company I was working with. Not so much them, but the sort of like who was controlling it, the money, it wasn't. So I sort of said, okay, I'm going to make a short film. I've never done anything like this before. I'll see what happens on my own. What turned an idea of like a little 15-minute turned into 35 hours of footage, and me spending most of my time on the road, people telling me their amazing stories. We had our second kid around that time, so my wife was producing it, but then she sort of like moved over to sort of looking after children. So never let the writer, the director, and the producer be the same person. Never do that, because you'll end up with 35 hours of footage. And Steve came out, so we released Steve in 2019, and the idea was like, it's a 90-minute doc, and the idea was to sort of to get men get men talking. And as I was doing the making of it, I decided that I didn't want to just sort of get it on streaming services like we'd done with Slowing Down Fast Fashion or sort of like these other ones that I'd worked on before. It was more about, I'm going to go out to men. I'm going to be where men are. So I remember saying to a friend of mine who runs a mental health charity, I'm going to take you to pubs. And he went to me, Benny, that's brilliant. He goes, I could never get away with that, but that's brilliant. So that's what I did. I took it to pubs, and as we were doing it, we did a pre-screening, and someone said to me, "What now? You've opened me up. What now?" And I was like, "I haven't thought this through." Okay. Talking to a couple of the producers, and it was sort of like Neil, who's one of the producers. I said, "Well, what if we start a talking group, right? Just off the back of this thing?" And so then I pulled in other people in the film. There were 6 of us started it. Gav was my co-CEO, co-founder. He did the music for it. He's also a therapist. So suddenly sort of like it almost like organically came together, right? And then we released it 2019. And then suddenly every single time I showed a film, a talk club would come in the wake of when we did it as a pub tour. We sort of in these pubs. And now we're like, what are we up to now? We're up to 6 years later from the release of it, we've got over 120 clubs. So
it's crazy.
One of my talks is I'm a CEO of a charity I didn't mean to start, but that's true. I didn't mean to do this. I just sort of made a film about my friend who died, and now we've got this mental fitness movement through luck, through hard work from all the other members of the gang. That's where we're up to, really.
Well, it's just a testament to you, because you are clearly providing something really valuable to people. That stigma that specifically males have around mental health, you've almost tried to bring that kind of angle of mental fitness. Like, tell us about that. What is that?
So being back to problem solving. And being about language. So I interviewed a bloke called Danny Sculthorpe, ex rugby league captain, Leeds Rhinos, an amazing, literally, I interviewed him. He's only in the film for about 6 minutes, but I interviewed him for 2 hours. I could just listen to Danny talk all the time, like literally such an inspirational man. And he introduced me to the idea of mental fitness. He sort of said it's about being mentally fit. And as soon as that went, literally a light bulb went on. And as you know, in the creative industry, ideas can come from anywhere, and you just grab them and you start pulling them in. And I go, okay, we need to create a mentally fit society. That was a strategy. But then how do we do that? And Blue O'Connor, who's one of our founders as well, he sort of said, well, I've been working with kids, and we use this technique of How Are You Out of 10. How Are You Out of 10 has been around for years. It's used by the NHS. And I said, well, let's use that, because men are just kids, right? Because we haven't got the language on how to talk. We haven't got, people go and talk to your friends about how you're feeling. Go, we might as well say go and speak Latin. I've never done that before, right? So combining those two, the idea of creating a mentally fit society, because if we're mentally fit, we're mentally strong. We're changing, as the name of this podcast, we're changing the narrative, right? But then how do you do that? You do that by going, okay, changing the language inside, put it into numbers. You go, I'm a 6, I'm a 5, I'm a 8. Why? Why are you an 8 or an 8.2 instead of a 7.2? Why? And then you've got your own reasons why. And now you've got those moments, and you can actually answer that out the back end of it. And that's what's been really fascinating for us, is actually going, like, my wife doesn't particularly like it. My wife doesn't particularly like she's one of the founders as well. She doesn't really like the How Are You Out of 10. She goes, well, I'm an 8 and I'm a 4. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. What colour are you? Well, I'm a mauve. And I'm going, okay, that means nothing to me. That means absolutely nothing to me as a bloke. But if you feel comfortable with a mauve, that's fine. So it's I think it just really resonates with blokes, because we're really practical. I mean, with me, I sort of like whatever number I wake up at. If I wake up at a low number, I'll go, okay, why am I a low number? How do I improve my number today? Like, I feel quite low at the moment. As I said, 7.5. When this is finished, I'm going to go for a long walk. I'm back to the office. I'm going to take myself in for a decent walk. I'm going to clear my head, because I couldn't do that before. I wasn't allowed to do that because I had meetings before this. So I'm going to take control of it.
Yeah.
Right? The same way we do with our physical health. Right? So we know that if we've got a bad ankle or we've got a bad back, we need to rest it. But we don't do that with our mind. We don't do that with our brains. And that's what we're trying to do with that stigma, because society tells us at the moment we're still working on the broken fix it. We wait for ourselves to have a heart attack before we go for a run. Literally, that is how we are looking after our mental health in this country. Yeah. But you are employed for your brain. You are the success you are because of your brain, right? Even elite sportsmen are actually the reason why they are so elite. The reason why Messi is as good as he is he's got skill, but it's because of his mental strength.
Totally.
Right? And it's to me, it's fascinating how far behind we are when it comes to our mental strength and our mental fitness. So that's the reason why I think that's the reason why we're getting so much traction, because we're keeping it really, really positive. We're not patting blokes on the head going, oh, you're not this, you're not that. We look at it as going like same way you go for a run, or we've seen you a few times, you go for a run. When I see you going for a run, I say, good on you, right? I say, brilliant on Josh going out and getting himself out there. I don't go, God, he must be fat. But if you go for therapy, first thing someone goes to you is, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? They don't go, and I go, nothing's wrong, I'm going to therapy. Same as you are going yourself, keeping yourself fit, right? There's not a negative towards physical health, but there's a negative towards mental health. And that's the reason why it's really, really important for these conversations, and for a lot of the stuff that we do, is just keeping everything really, really positive.
100%. Yeah, I that's amazingly well put. It's almost just like a break in routine as well, isn't it? Like in some ways, it's actually fine being a 8.2 and a 4. It's the fact that you're able to identify and think about it, and then do something about it. I love the other approach, which is like, how's the weather today? And you can say, oh, I'm feeling a bit stormy, or really sunny, or a bit foggy. You know, it's just that ability to stop. We're all so busy nowadays, aren't we? And I think being able to check in.
Yeah.
Tell me just. I mean, I've taken part in Talk Club multiple times, and for me, as somebody who's a runner, I absolutely love the Clifton Downs running group. Tell me how a typical kind of pub session would work for the listeners.
So we've got 3 main areas that we work with, and we also work with businesses now, right? So, but the three areas we look at is just talk and exercise. So all you do is you check in how you are out of 10, and a headline why. Then you go for a run, and then a headline why at the end, right? Sometimes if you can be running together, you can do it in 2s, or you might have a bigger checkout, right? So it depends on the captain on how comfortable they are. But at football, skating, rugby, it's a really, really light touch inside your mental fitness. Yeah. All you're doing is saying a number and why. That idea was almost like becomes a feeder to the talk and listen groups. So the talk and listen groups are almost like more of our core, our bread and butter, if you were sort of like in the comms world, of sort of like a typical talk club is 8 to 10 men sitting in a male comfortable space. I mean, the first ever talk club was in the back of the Bristol Beer Factory, but we're in sports clubs, we're in back rooms of pubs, anywhere men feel comfortable. 8 to 10 men. You have a talking ball, which I gave you earlier, which goes round, and the captain normally sets the tone. Be as honest or say as much or as little as you like. They'll say their number and they'll say why. This goes around a circle, the ball goes around a circle. So it's perfect for people who are less quiet or introverts versus extroverts. They've got their time when they've got their hold on the ball. And then they'll go around. The second round is what you're grateful for. So what I'll do is I'll normally moan about my kids in my check-in, but then I'm really grateful for my kids, right? So I'll know how stupid it is, but this is what I'm feeling at the moment because I'm so grateful for my kids and I'm so lucky, right? So then your third bit, the round 3 is my favourite round, which is how you can look after your mental fitness this week, right? So moving forward, let's not worry about what happened last week, right? Let's not dwell on the past, if you like. How can you move yourself forward? What are you going to look after yourself? How are you going to look after yourself this week? And I've been sitting in rooms where this sort of like, this bloke's been sitting there and this other bloke's been sitting across from him for 3 or 4 weeks and he's gone, I think I'm going to try yoga. And then sort of like gets round to him and he goes, well, if you're going to try yoga, I'm going to try yoga. Yeah. And we've got these men who 6 weeks ago have never even met. Never in a million years sort of get them at a yoga session. We've got talking yoga now for men, right? So you sort of going, so suddenly you've got these people who never think would connect, have suddenly become friends. Then you've also got the way they're looking after themselves. They're looking after their mental fitness is by that, or they might go, I'm starting a book club, or I'm going to be looking after this, or I'm going to be looking after that. So positive ways you look after yourself, and then simply your checkout number. And our average check-in is 5.9, our average check-out is 7.6, right? So you go across all our groups, we've got an increase of, what is that, 16%? So 17% at the moment. So you're sort of going like, and in different areas, what we found is that like North Somerset is one of our really interesting groups. Where we've got loads of groups down there. I think we've got 12 in North Somerset. And their check-in numbers are a lot higher. Their check-in numbers like 6.4. But that's because these men have been coming to these groups and they are mentally fitter. So they're checking out roughly the same, but they're going to the gym and they're fitter. So they're coming out feeling fitter, but they're checking in feeling fitter. And like, I love it when you go sit there and you've got a man who goes, I'm an 8. And I love this. I love that and like one of our blokes, Jack, who was running our Rovers groups, he goes, I don't really say much anymore. I come in, I check it in at an 8, and then I might leave an 8.5. But if I miss a week or I miss 2 weeks, I know about it.
Yeah.
And this brings it back to the same way we are about our exercise.
Yeah.
Like, if I haven't played football for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, I know about it when I play. My legs are hurting. I'm sort of like, so why am I not playing every week? Why are we not doing that with our brains every week? And that's what Talk Club is. So it's a typical session, 2 hours, 8, 10 men, 4 rounds, really, really simple, much or as little as you like, but really, really welcoming.
Yeah, progress, not perfection as well.
Yeah, always progress, yeah.
So what I absolutely love about Talk Club and the various other, amazing things that you've been behind is almost the single-mindedness of it. It clearly comes from somebody who spent some time in some creative agencies. And I feel like the success of whether it's the communications that you're behind or just the initiative in the first place, it feels so considered and arguably simple. Like the best ideas are the simple ones, right?
Yeah.
Tell us, like you mentioned, you got into the agency world, making you feel a little bit older right now, 1998. How did you get into that? And like, was there any standout campaigns? Like, when was it that communications was the thing that you were gonna? I think you even said you were going to be a chef at one point. Right?
Yeah, well, I sort of like, so I grew up in South London. There was like 200 kids in 198 boys in my year. Only 2 of us went to university, right? Non-selective school, pretty, excuse the language, shitty place. I'd always had my mum, had always sort of like encouraged me to be creative. So I'd always had art. I'm not a brilliant visual artist, but I always had art to move back on. But I was always like, from when I was a kid, from when I was young, when I was 14, 15, I was making flyers for mates, for mates' older brothers' gigs, and sort of like being paid 50 quid for sort of like, but back in the sort of like, back in the early 90s, late 80s, being 50 quid for some flyers was pretty good money, right, at 14. So I was always sort of slightly more creatively entrepreneurial. Well, I never knew what that was back then, but it was always like trying to work out how to use creativity to solve a problem. Went to art college. Didn't really get. I did my A-levels. Didn't really get on with my art teacher because she just wanted me to create a photograph. She wanted me to draw this beautiful thing, and I'm not a great artist, but loved the creative process. Went to art college. Discovered advertising. Did that at Bucks. Did 3 years at uni at Bucks, and then. But the thing is that's all just built for the top 30 ad agencies in London. That's all it's built for. You do a lot of placements. You sort of like, I was teamed up with an art director and Nadine, who I worked with for 10 years, a brilliant lady and brilliant art director. And you get hired and fired as a team. So it was really interesting for me, just working with really interesting people, bouncing between these sort of, and then bouncing between different agencies. You get paid very well. I mean, like, I earned more money when I was 22 than I do now, right? And now I've got 3 kids and a massive mortgage. But you get to these things where you believe, you get the confidence levels where you believe that ideas can do anything. But I've really found it hard inside selling crap to people they didn't need.
Yeah.
And I went to Sydney, and I joined a small agency called Droga 5, massive New York agency. Had loads of interviews with different people when we went. Me and my wife went over there for a recce, and had a couple of job offers, but decided to take the one with the least money. But Dave Nobby convinced me. He goes, "You want to be an architect?" And he just basically just sold it to me, and it was in honest the best decision I ever made. Because the first thing I did was I got Vanilla Ice to say sorry for his musical wrongs, and on my 3 month, but the day of my 3 month probation, I've been nominated for a Cannes Lion, and I've never had the Cannes Lion before, and I've only been in the country for like 5 months, literally. And we just got it in, and it was hilarious. It's sort of like on that day, I was like, okay. I go, can I stay there? And he goes, okay, yeah, I think you can stay. And then the next one, we did a thing called where, again, problem solving, which was I had to sell weekend deals. Which is, I can't believe I'm saying this to you, sustainability-wise, but I had to send weekend deals to LA from Sydney. So it's a 14-hour flight there, a 14-hour flight back, and you're only there for 72 hours. It's 100 hours. And I was like, this is something really interesting, the idea of hours. So I sort of said, what about if we didn't look at it as a weekend, we didn't look at it as 3 days, we didn't look at it as 72 hours, we looked at it as 4,320 minutes. And what could you get up to in 4,320 minutes in LA? And that was when Twitter was starting to kick in. It was like 2010. So Twitter was sort of starting to kick in. So I went, okay, what happens if we got someone to tweet every minute they're in LA? 4,320 tweets, right? So that's what we did. So we went over to LA, I filmed it all, got these 3 blokes in their sort of early 20s to sort of like to tweet every minute we were there, created loads of things for them to do, sort of like one got Botox, one got sort of like a tattoo, one sort of like, it was insane. Like, because you don't live LA by the day, you live it by the minute. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I had 3 hours sleep in 3 days, right? And we were staying in the SLS hotel, and I literally, my head hit the pillow for like two stints in 3 days. Pushed me to an extreme inside my own creativity and sort of like production levels, and pushed myself. Got back, wiped the floor with all the awards, lions, pencils everywhere. So I almost like ticked a really nice box in my own ego stuff. So they've got that nicely. Suddenly all the money's flying at me. They're throwing everything they can to try and keep me where I am. And I was like, okay, I need a challenge, because up until that point, money was always going to be, you do get your thing by your recognition by money. But also in the creative industry, it's about awards. And I needed those awards just to say awards don't matter, right? So as soon as I got those, I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I took a gig at Y&R doing sort of big global work. Hated it. Hated every second of it. Needed that moment in Fight Club where you go, I wanted to destroy something beautiful. And then found an agency called, I was playing football with a bloke called Scott Mantis Flynn. I was complaining about how I hated my world and wanted to quit and go and work in a coffee shop. He said, come and work with me. He goes, we can't afford you, but come and work with me. I quartered my salary and went to work for Republic of Everyone. And probably the second best decision I ever made in my creative career, because Republic was brilliant, and just sort of like, again, just starting fights with people, starting fights with sort of like this. That's where I started learning all the stuff that I'd learned from before, doing it with big budgets. But now I've got $10,000 to make a film. So we took on Coke for Greenpeace, and I took on the asylum seeker debate, and my KPI was to get the newspapers to talk about it, but I got the Prime Minister talking about it within 3 days. The Prime Minister was standing up in in the Senate or wherever she was, and holding up the pamphlet that we created in 3 days of launching. So it's sort of like, so I was going, creativity's got power.
Yeah.
And then, so then 2 years of that, 3 years of that. And then and then when Bella was nearly 2, we decided to come back in the country for 2 weeks, and then Steve died. So that was sort of like, that was the point up until that point. But it's always been about problem solving for me.
And the state of creativity at the moment, in that time frame, the world has become a more noisy place. We've become much more addicted to our little small black fridges, the little screens, the multiple screens that we have in our lives. Where do you see the state of creativity for brands and charities specifically? Because you've worked with big budgets, you've worked with no budget, but as you just mentioned earlier in the conversation, a creative idea can come from anywhere and you can run with it. Are you seeing creativity and the influence that has from a positive, good perspective still remaining really high, or is it getting harder to cut through?
It's almost impossible to cut through now. I think it's almost impossible. I think the problem is that, in my opinion, I think the problem is that technology has moved us into such a good space that there is a lot of people doing a lot of work. Yeah. And you've really got to look out, and you've really got to search for sort of like, back in my day, it's sort of like I remember Channel 4 coming in, right? So there was 3 channels, and then there was a 4th, and then there was a 5th. And like now, no one really watches terrestrial TV. Now you can literally, the kids can watch whatever they want, whenever they want, from wherever they want, right? They can watch movies on my phone, or they can watch it in the multiple screens in the multiple ways. And so I think the access that we've now got to all different ideas is fantastic, but it's also to the detriment of brands, to the detriment of charities. I mean, there's 167,000 charities in the UK. Whoa. Right? Why choose us? So my whole thing is, but the reason why we're black and white, the reason why we look like our brand is a little bit shit, right, is because, and I've got access to some of the best designers in the world, right? And all of them have sort of like, when I explain this to them, get it. Like the bloke who created this, Ollie Guys, amazing designer, right? Local designer. He came in and he had this whole beautiful presentation about how the brand was going to be, right? Beautiful colours and this, and made us look really professional, right? And I sat through the whole presentation. I go, mate, it's a beautiful presentation. It's wrong. And he's like, what? I go, and I literally folded up, because the whole thing about our flyer, I wanted the flyer to carry on going. And I go, look, your flyer, beautiful colour, beautiful. I put it over in a coffee shop near where, down at Wapping Wharf, when we first met, put it into that, and I went, that doesn't stand out. And I got our crappy black and white one that runs out of a photocopier, and I put it in the middle of it all. I go, that stands out. And this is the whole point, is I think people can keep throwing money at things, keep throwing technology at things, but they're not standing out. And they're
not solving a problem, right?
No,
they're not reverse engineering.
No, and I was lucky enough to work for John Hegarty for 3 years, and being a couple of offices down from him and spending time with John. I was lucky enough to be his copywriter on one shoot. I'm sitting there on an ad with John Hegarty, and I'm his writer. It was like amazing, right? Like, the man's a legend. He's the reason why I read an article by him when I was 14, and he's the reason why I wanted to be in advertising. And his whole stuff with Levi's, when the world zigs, you zag, right, is always in the back of my head. The black sheep. That's the reason why. That's the reason why BBH is the black sheep. That's the reason why it's all about trying to stand out. When everyone's going one way, you go the other. Like, so to me, while everyone's doing all these amazing sort of like bits in technology and sort of like social media and blah, 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 a flyer through a door, a black and white flyer through a door, cuts through quicker than anyone else because no one's there anymore. Yeah. Like the first ever piece we did when we just had a Facebook group, I sent out 400, I got some students to hand out 400 black and white A6 flyers. I had 400 men join us, join a Facebook group from 4,000 flyers. You do not get that return on anything else. Because what happened was I was trying to work out what the relationship is. A flyer goes through the door, man picks it up, goes, yeah, okay, I think I need that. I'll put that in my pocket. But more importantly, in my world, right, I've got 3 kids. My wife picks it up because it's not my time. I haven't got time. My time is family time. She goes, I'm worried about you. I want you to go to this.
Yeah.
And that is understanding how men will react, how people react to stuff. 400 men joined our Facebook group.
Yeah, you can't get that on Facebook.
No, it doesn't happen because what happens is the algorithms are so beautifully put together now that nothing goes viral anymore. I remember back in the day when I did Vanilla Rice, I remember 301 plus, right? Now you probably are too young to remember this, but it's sort of like back in the day before the algorithms were worked out, 301 plus was like the big like boom. Like we put up Vanilla Rice and we press refresh and it couldn't catch up, and it went 301 plus, and then suddenly you press refresh again. So this is 20 seconds from uploading it. One refresh 301 plus, one refresh again, 17,000 views, wow. 17,050 views or whatever. Press it again, 33,000 views. Press it again, 80,000 views, and you're going like. So literally within a minute, it's gone viral. Back in the day, of viral, and that was where like same with sort of like when we took on Coke for Greenpeace, we uploaded that film, and soon as we pressed it, 301 plus, and you go, fuck, we got something now, right? But the world isn't built that way now. The world is built because the algorithms are so controlled by Facebook and Meta and YouTube that you can't get that viral. The only place you can really get viral is probably via WhatsApp. But it's a bit of a sort of like, even with those forwards, it's a bit sort of strange. So the creativity's pulled out of it. I mean, we used to have this thing when we was a Republic, when you've not got the big media budgets, when you go, why would I care? Why would I share? Why would I share?
Yeah.
You've got to make something that's so interesting that people want to share it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is really, really hard for the campaigning work and the sort of like the brands who haven't got the big budgets to actually make those noises inside that. I mean, like even with funding and charities, like Blue, one of our head of fundraising, he was telling me that 90% of the charities, 1% of the charities, 1% of charities in the UK get 90% of the funding. 1%.
Wow.
So that when you think about your big Samaritans and your big Calms and your big Movember have got like 30 million in the bank. Why?
Yeah. Why?
Like, I think there should be a rule, especially as a small startup charity, there should be a rule that you shouldn't be able to have more than 3 years in your reserves for your salaries. Why do you need 30 million? Like, and that, I mean, I don't know the exact figure, but it's like, but I know that if you look on the, don't take my word for it, please look at the Charity Commission's things. You can see how much money is in reserves. But
there's a need more than ever to support the non-high street
the
charity
little ones.
brands, the small guys, the local people.
So as a charity, go with the little. I promise your fiver will go far further to the little charities than it will to the big boys or the big boys and girls. But it's the same as the brands, right? Don't keep going sort of like, so especially in sustainability, like go for the little ones who are trying to make a difference. Don't go for the big ones. Like
the interesting thing there is that you've had experience working with global brands, and your ambition for creativity is right up there. You know, like, how did you get Liam Gallagher or Tyson Fury involved in your small little charity? Because that is quite a tall ask for a lot of small charities. But it's been amazing that you've done it.
Persistence. I mean, like literally. So we got. You create your own luck, right? We got lucky, right? But you create your own luck, right? Gav used to be a musician. He's kept some really good relationships with different people. One of those people is a fantastic man called Phil Christie. Phil, unfortunately, lost his brother to suicide. And when we do the original Miles, so Miles is the one we're talking about, who's Phil's brother, and Phil knows Liam. Phil signed Liam, so that was the starter connection with that. But if I'm honest, it was because we do everything with really good integrity, and we make sure that we're really safe and everything like that. So we've got these principles about safety and about making sure that we do everything that's positive and integrity. So when Liam created Too Good for Giving Up, he'd already heard about us. Through Phil. And he sort of turned around and he goes, "Can you find? I'd like to release this for a mental health charity. I think the big boys were mentioned." And he goes, "No, I want to do it for Talk Club." And it's nice. Like, so we were lucky. If I'm honest, we were lucky.
You make your own luck,
but a little bit in that world. And then when it comes down to Tyson, we were Tyson is with Warner as well. He was releasing a single, and they'd been working with another charity, but they were moving too slowly, right? And my take is, you give me a foot in the door and I'm putting my whole body in, right? I'm in, right? So they were moving too slowly, and they rang us up and they said, would we be interested in working with him? And we went, yeah, right then. And it goes, well, do you need to sort of like, who do you need to run this through? And I go, well, me and Gav are sitting in a room now. We say yes. And then suddenly everything moved very, very quickly. But because we could be nimble, because we could work very, very quickly inside stuff, we produced a video for them. We got all the footage for them. My youngest is doing the ba, right? So he's holding up cards. Steve's family are in the video. A lot of the Talk Club community are in the video. We made those things. They cut it all together, but we got all the films for them in a week. We made things happen.
Yeah.
And I think that
red tape. Yeah. Like move quickly. Startup mentality.
We 100%. The way that we do things, we look at it as sort of like fail fast and cheap. That's the way I look at everything. It's sort of, we pilot everything. We go, like, someone comes to us with a fresh idea. We go, yeah, we can make that. Me and Gav back ourselves. Like, Gav goes, I've got this idea. And I go, it'd be better that way. I've got this idea. He goes, okay, it'd be better that way. Because he's a therapist, he can make sure the ideas are safe. He's a creative as well because he used to be a musician, so he can see things in a different way. Our team are very, very nimble and work very, very fast. But we can make things happen, really. There's 5 of us. I mean, there's 5 salaried and 5 part-time, but we've got we've made over we've trained over 700 captains, 120 groups, like Clearhead, like what you worked on. It was like Sam turned me down 3 times for that. Do you know what I mean? And I sort of going, no, there's something here, mate. There's something here. And now it's like it's
one of the best non-alcoholic drinks on the market, and it's absolutely flying.
Yeah, but the thing is, Brewster Gives come out of that because they can see the sort of like so you sort of going. So I think it's always going. To me, it was the deal that we struck with them was. To me, it was always about, with Sam, when I talked to the Bristol Beer Factory, the MD, I sort of said to him, like, I need you to make money, right? I need this to be a sustainable relationship. And this is the whole point about what quite a lot of charities don't understand, is sort of like the world of give me a fiver has gone, right? Because people haven't got fivers to give away anymore, right? If you're running up a mountain because you've got a personal attachment to someone you've lost to suicide or something like that, please choose us. But I need to give you something in return for supporting us, right? So we get 5% of sales from total sales from Clearhead, and we're coming close to 100 grand that we've had donated since we've started, right? And that has been able for us to employ someone for the best part of 2.5 years, and keep a roof over our head, right?
Proper tangible impact, yeah.
Proper tangible impact, because Barney, Steve Barnard, I literally attribute the sort of like the money that we get from Clearhead to his salary, right? So like we get roughly between 35 and 40 grand a year, and we pay for Barney with that, right? And he himself, he's saved hundreds of men's lives by creating the clubs that he has. So I can sort of like go, but I think the whole point with all of that was literally going, understanding that Bristol Beer Factory need to make money. We can help with that purpose-driven story. We know where the first ever talk club was in BBF, so there's a narrative there that is already real. It's not fake. It's not purpose washing. It's not sort of like, because that's one thing I'm really, really careful of. Like I'm not going to talk about it now, but it's sort of like we've had people we've worked with us that want to purpose wash. And you've got to be, so as we know in this world, you go like, no, you've got nothing to say about you. But if you start if you start giving some tangible change inside this, brands can make a difference. Now that's where it starts getting really interesting for me, because when you're involved in a brand from the start, like Clearhead or Wogan, another brilliant partner with us, sort of like we've got a coffee, we've got a decaf coming out in May with them, right? James, you promised this, so we're going to get one in May. But it's just, that to me is really, really interesting. That's where the power of a brand is really, really interesting. The power of a brand can make tangible change in the world, both with the environment and both with mental health. And the stories are there. Now that's where comms should be going, but people are too scared. So now it seems like we're going backwards again.
Well, that authenticity is there,
100%.
But people are so scared of being called out for inauthenticity that, green hush is the biggest problem out there. Greenwashing, there's only genuinely greenwashing happens out of a very small amount of people who are authentically trying to pull the wool above your eyes.
It's a green hush. Talk about green hush.
So greenwashing is effectively hyperinflating your credentials to make yourself look good, which is done in mainly two ways. Mainly through a lack of awareness and education. People do greenwash by accident often. Maybe especially in the world of like social media, for example, you might have a junior on social media. They might not have the blinkers might be on. People don't know what they don't know. Of course, there is a proportion of people who, intentionally hyperinflate their credentials. Green hushing is, I'm going to stay quiet because I'm going to be worried about being called out about something I'm doing authentically.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to put my head above the parapet. It's much easier to stay in the shadows and hide away from something that I am or I'm not doing. Yeah. And put the heat on. Look at this. Look at the Green Claims Code. The first brands that got called out for greenwashing were the likes of Oatly and Innocent. Their whole business is set up around, at some level, doing good. Call out like British Airways. Call out the brand that you've never heard of who's intentionally greenwashing, not the ones that are actually trying to do it. So the fact that people are seeing, the good guys getting called out means that people aren't even talking about it in the first place. And that is the worst thing that we can have.
Yeah, and from a comms agency that's built around that's really hard.
Really hard.
Because what you're doing is you're sort of going, you've got an authentic story. I mean, I even had to do it with BBF. I had to sort of like with Clem, and sort of like Clem's an amazingly smart man, but he goes, I don't know whether I feel comfortable with going ahead with this. So I had to tell him a story about how a can of Clearhead has saved a life. I had to tell him about that. I go, I can put my hand on my heart. I know that man. And he goes, what really? And I was like, mate, that is just one story.
Authenticity, yeah.
There'll be 100 stories under that, and that's the reason why this can save a life. That's the reason why we put it out. But it is hard putting your head above the parapet. But the thing is, when you've got like with Clearhead and like with BBF and like with the team over there, they are, when you've worked with them as well, they're genuinely nice, beautiful people who are trying to do their best with the powers they've got.
The best, yeah. And
it's sort of like, and that's the reason why it's great to have great partners like that. And the same with James and Wogan, and what we're working on other projects at the moment, where we're trying to sort of go, if I can give you something, we can get 10%. If we can sell you something that you already buy, right? But then we get 10% of that, then you can sustain the charity and you can help save lives with that. Now, to me, as a marketer, like in a narrative, you go, that's interesting.
It's a win-win-win, isn't it?
Yeah,
good stories attract other good people and good partners and good customers.
And as long as they're making good money, I mean, that's the whole point. Like 100%. Clearhead, we got lucky because, again, Tristan created an amazing liquid. But And it would never have gone anywhere if the product wasn't brilliant. But it's a good product that does good. And you're sort of going like, and the more you can shout about that, then the better you'll be. And I think that is sort of like, that is what I hope out the future of comms.
100%. Oh, that's like the 101 foundations for all of the communications that we do in Viral, is that sustainability or positive impact, that shouldn't be the primary message. The fact that product tastes good or looks good or functionally performs well is the number one thing. The fact that the business model is, you know, incorporating social good is the secondary thing, and the reason why people keep coming.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, like it should be. I mean, because I'm still involved in D&AD and the White Pencil and Impact Council. So I'm still involved in that, and I've signed up for another stint recently. And to me, it's like, I remember saying in 2014 when I was interviewed about it, I sort of said, I don't want there to be a White Pencil. I want everything to be White Pencil, 100%. Right? I want every brand to start acting, to have that credential, that sustainability, what B Corp was originally intended for, what we're trying to do inside actually the future of the way that we interact with each other, the way the brands interact. It's got to be that way. We still live in this positive world, even though what's happening in the States at the moment. But you sort of like, but I think that we can only do what we can control in our own little world, and we do have power with what we buy. We do have power with the choices we make, and I think that is where it gets creatively really, really interesting, right? And that's where, like, sometimes I sort of, especially when I was at Republic or everyone in Sydney, sometimes I just sort of go, I wish I'd have taken the blue pill. Like, I don't want to know about all of this stuff, but you do have a power as creative people, and you can make change. And that's what I love about what we do. And that's what I love about the work you're doing. And I love all the campaign work you've done over the years since I'm always watching about what you're up to. Is about those positive changes that we can make inside those little, I mean, we're tiny. Talk Up is tiny, right? But excuse the pun, we're punching way above our weight. Yeah. Right? Because we shout loud. Right, and that's what you've got to do. You've got to shout loud.
Ben, we've got to wrap it up. Unfortunately, we could literally go on for another 5 or 6 podcasts, and we might have to do a whole series with you at some point. But we always end with a few quick fire questions. First of all, music. What are you listening to at the moment?
Yeah, so I know I've got this question because I don't listen to anything special. I listen to the old stuff. So I've still got like, it was really nice for me. I did SWU Radio the other week, and I had to put together 20 tracks for sort of like almost like the tracks of my life and the stories of life. Yeah. Right. And it was really interesting. But I still bounce around with like gigs I used to hit with sort of, I was listening to 505 for the Arctic Monkeys on the way over. I still listen to The Enemy, The Twang, the sort of like Oasis. I sort of like that's my era. That's my era of gigs, of sort of like Feeder, and we're trying to work with some of these guys at the moment. Yeah.
If you're, maybe let me reframe the question. If you're a 5 and you know that music could get you up to a 6.5.
Oh, no, I've got a playlist on that.
So I've actually got one track out of that would. I'm intrigued to know, do you go really happy, or do you actually go and seek comfort in a bit of darkness?
It literally depends. Like if I do know that if I put Radiohead on, it starts raining. So I've got to be careful of sort of like of chucking Radiohead. If it comes on, I'm looking out the window. But there was, it came from a moment in a Talk Club session. My little one was quite young. She might have been 3 or something like that. And she wasn't sleeping very well. And normally what I would do is she might get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go downstairs and I'd sit on the couch with her, and I'd put CBeebies on, and I'd try and sort of get her to, I'd fall asleep. In one of the sessions, someone sort of said, he's got insomnia, but he gets up in the morning and he goes outside, and he watches the sun come up, and he reads a book. And I wasn't reading a lot. I love reading. I'm always reading about five or six books at a time. And So I was like, I'm going to try that tomorrow. So when she got me up, we went outside, watched the sun come up. I got a coffee and started reading a book. She was playing on the slide. We watched the sun come up together. It was pretty impressive, right? I walked inside and I decided to make pancakes for everyone, and I've chucked Pharrell Happy on. So Pharrell Happy is my happy song, right? Kids come down, Claire comes down. And suddenly it's 7:30. Everyone's got pancakes. Everyone's really happy. Pharrell's been played about 16 times, and we're in a good space, right? So he helps me. Pharrell is, if I want to be lifted into the happy world, I put that on because I go back to that moment.
Love it.
Right? But inside this whole track list is sort of like, I mean, Tears of the Clown by Smokey is sort of like, is bringing me back to being 13 again. But a lot of songs will put me back into moments. Like, a lot of songs are about Steve. I mean, sort of like, so Steve's got there's songs that will trigger me about Steve, like a bit of Entrance Set Me Free was sort of like what we used to zoom around in his white Fiat Uno. So when I want to think about Steve, I'll chuck that on. So a lot of these tracks are moments in my life and will bring me up or bring me closer. So yeah, music, important stuff.
You mentioned your love for reading just now. What book would you recommend for listeners if they were to engage with something? Okay,
what I would recommend for listeners is J.J. Bowler. Okay. So J.J. Bowler is a good friend of mine, poet, and he's written. He's got. So basically, he is. He wanted me to interview him for a literary festival, and he was going to donate his fee to Talk Club. Right, so that's how we met. Because I've seen where I did my TED Talk. He was down in Tunbridge Wells. He's seen my TED Talk and he goes, I will donate it if Ben comes down and interviews me. I was like, okay, brilliant. So I get to make a new friend. JJ Bowler's written a couple of amazing books, but his book about masculinity is beautiful because he's a man born in the Congo, talks about masculinity in African communities. But as a poet, he wrote me a poet for Valentine's Day about how men should love themselves. It's beautiful, and so anything by J.J. Bowler is sort of like is my recommendation.
And if you could partner with any person or brand, who and why?
So I mean, like, it's interesting because for me, like after we got Liam, then we got Tyson, and then someone put on a LinkedIn post, who are you going after, God next? The next person I want is, I'm working on a Talk Club Fight Club soap, okay? So I want Brad Pitt, and I want... So Brad Pitt is all I want next.
That's so good. Right. The soap is amazing, by the way.
All right, so that's what we're working on, and I need soap manufacturers. So come to me, soap manufacturer, if you're out there. And what I want to try and do is I want to try and create this sort of like, because there's loads of stuff inside that language, especially with men of our age of 99, when it first came out. And so Ed Norton. And Brad Pitt as my sort of like, if I could have anyone, Brad Pitt in a "How Are You Out of 10" t-shirt, holding up a Talk Club soap. Okay, that's what I challenge you with, please.
Love it. I love it. Ben, thank you so much for being so vulnerable, for being you, for running Talk Club. Really enjoyed that conversation, and really appreciate you coming on the Shifting the Narrative podcast. Thanks, man.
Mate, thank you.
Spuds. In fact, then let's hug it out. Nice. Cheers, dude.